Tonight we're in Dover to talk about an issue that's done so much to shape our politics in recent years: immigration. For many, the small boats that arrive on these shores are the most visible sign that the country's lost control of its borders. Tonight we'll be asking, what should Britain's asylum system look like? How do we balance control with compassion? And what does this debate say about who we are as a nation? Welcome to Question Time Immigration Special from Dover. The Government and Migration Minister Mike Tapp. He's a Labour MP for Dover and Deal. Amongst a range of new measures, the government wants to review people's refugee status every 2.5 years and deport people when their countries of origin are considered safe. Kieran Mullan is the Conservative Shadow Justice Minister. His party says it would deport all illegal migrants in a week after arrival and leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Daisy Cooper is the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats. They want to allow asylum seekers to work and plan to set up big processing centres to clear the backlog. Zack Polanski is a leader of the Green Party. He wants to see a world without borders and, until that happens, have what he calls a fair system of immigration where people can move if they wish to do so. Zia Yusuf is Reform UK's head of policy. His party wants to deport hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants within 5 years of taking office and scrap indefinite leave to remain. Good evening, welcome to the programme, to our panel, and welcome to our audience here. And as you know, this is going to be a programme on one topic, a special topic of immigration, and we have come to Dover especially to do that. So as it's a special programme, we're going to do things a little bit differently at the top of the programme. We have a wide range of views in our audience, as we always do every week, and we thought we might start by hearing some of them. So, Peter Owen, let's hear from you. What's your view on the level of immigration at the moment?
Well, we have thousands of these migrants coming over on the boats, plus others. What I want to know is, how does the government find the money to give them what they need when our pensioners and our low paid are going without?
OK. Heather McLean, what about you?
We have so many people in this country, we don't actually know who is in the country anymore, and I feel it's not safe. I've got 2 daughters. I don't allow them to go out on their own without knowing where they are, because I just feel every time you turn the TV on, something's happened, and it's always that sort of thing that goes on. OK. Nicola Grindley.
I feel very strongly that nobody has a choice whom they're born to, where they're born to, or under what circumstances they're born to. And with legal migration spiralling out of control, I'm concerned about people forget about the humanitarian needs.
Janice Butler?
Should we allow immigrants to work, to pay their way, or help towards pay their way?
OK, you think that would be a good idea?
I do, but I think it would obviously have to be monitored, because I think that alone in society could make another anti-immigrants.
OK.
If they're taking their jobs.
OK. Well, look, that's a range of views here in Dover that we've heard, and I'm sure we'll hear many more, but thank you for that. Let's kick off with our first question, which is from Paul Smith.
You frequently cry, stop the boats, smash the gangs, one in, one out. Nobody's listening anymore. I don't believe you. What are you really going to do? Because whatever has been done so far amounts to nothing.
Right, well, that is something of a cri de coeur from you, Paul, I would say. Mike?
Paul, it's a good question, and I don't know whether I've knocked on your door, but I've knocked on many doors in the constituency. I've had many of my colleagues around the country, and we understand fully the strength of feeling that we need to bring order and control back into the immigration system, and we're taking this seriously, and I, as the Immigration Minister, do too. We've made some progress. We've deported and removed nearly 50,000, and immigration working rates are now up to the highest they've been in British history. But we know we've got to go further, and you would have seen over the last few weeks some of that. So we're making it less attractive for people to come here. easier to deport people, which is really important. We're bringing in counter-terror powers to take on the smuggling gangs. That's just this week. And also we're looking at all solutions, so also those safe and legal routes to ensure that as a compassionate country, we are providing that help to people who are fleeing war and persecution. For me, we have to deal with this issue because we need to unite. And you'll hear many opinions here tonight. You'll hear open borders and chaos, and that will feed division. You'll hear measures that are too hard, that punish and that close the doors completely. Again, that feeds division. We want to unite around this so that as a country we can move on and be the fantastic country that we are. I'm a true patriot and I really mean that, and a part of that is bringing that order and control back to the system.
Paul, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I like the idea of unite. Could we all unite in this problem that we have? Could there be a cross-party coming together to solve the problem rather than just it's your fault, it's my fault, it's your fault?
Well, listen, this could be a first. Somehow I'm not sure that's going to happen, Paul, but let's see. Zia, what's your answer to Paul?
Well, look, let's just look at what the Labour government has done. Let's look at what the Labour government has done. Over 70,000 people have arrived in the United Kingdom illegally since Labour came to power, 50,000 in the last 12 months. That is up 40% year on year relative to the Tory record, which was already a disaster. And notice the very smart sleight of hand that the immigration minister from Labour uses when he talks about 50,000 deportations and removals. Shall we talk about those 50,000, Mike?
Go for it.
A very tiny fraction of those are actual deportations, i.e. enforced
That's
removals.
why I said removals. That's why I said
removals. Will you accept then that over half of those 50,000 are what's known by the Home Office as other verified returns, which means the government literally didn't even know they were leaving until after they had left. Okay, do you know what percentage? Okay, Mike, genuine question. Mike, genuine question. What percentage of the people who have come here illegally under Labour have been deported?
Look, what's really important...
No, please answer my question.
What's really important
what
is
percentage of those 70,000 have been deported?
50,000 have been deported since we came to power.
What percentage of the 70,000 who have come here illegally?
You can do the maths of 70,000 and 50,000.
Mike is pretending to not know or actually doesn't know. The answer is 27. The answer is 2,700 people. Just 4% of the people who have arrived here illegally under Keir Starmer's awful government have been deported. That means 96% are still here. So it's no coincidence that these people are streaming across the channel on a daily basis. Britain is a soft touch, and what Labour has done is pour gasoline on a fire that the Tories created. It is totally unfair on British people, and by the way, I include legal migrants within that equation. It is totally unfair. People are furious about it, and for you to sit here and gaslight people with fake numbers, which the Home Office does, Shabana Mahmood does, time and again, I think is totally unacceptable and insulting to British people's intelligence.
Do you want to answer that briefly before I come?
I will be brief on this. Look, we're not a soft touch, and you've seen from the sweeping reforms to the system over the last few weeks is the largest since the Second World War. When it comes to the number of deportations and removal, what Zia is doing there is he's splitting hairs, and the reason he's doing that is he understands fully that it takes time to process a claim. We've increased that by 50% so that it's quicker, so we can remove people who shouldn't be here and help those that need it.
Lots of hands up. Let's hear from someone. The man in the blue sweater, right? Yes, there.
Evening, Mike. Yes, you're my MP. I hate to say this, but you're talking utter rubbish. Since the 18th of September, your one in, one out scheme has only seen the removal of 153 people to date. I've watched your video where you've been in your masquerading NCA high-vis while the border force are zooming around the English Channel to dramatic Dan Buster's music. It's all theatrical nonsense, because not anywhere in that video did you say any numbers, nothing. I don't believe Labour, and I think this one in, one out scheme needs to go under the carpet with the rest of the stuff.
All right, let's hear from the man in the front here in the white shirt.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing that stops the boats is the weather. Because if it's weather it is now, they won't come over. And that's the only reason it will stop the boats. All this about, we're going to stop the boats,
it doesn't work, as far as you're concerned. All right, let me hear one person. The man in the middle in the tech shirt with the glasses.
Yeah, I just want to put the language we use is really dehumanising for people. We're just saying these statistics. Like, people are not statistics. If we look where they're actually coming from, they're war zones. Like, I know there needs to be some sort of control, but, you know, they're going all over the place.
They're coming from France, sir.
Yeah, but they're people. And if we look in our history, they're countries which we've had a link to. So we're cutting foreign aid. What's that going to do? You're now creating a bigger problem. I'm not saying that all of our taxes need to go on foreign aid, but we need to look at the decisions we're making. We're just slapping holes all over the place with our taxes and going, oh, let's plug this one and another one opens. The language we use is so important towards human beings.
Zack.
This is exactly right. And it's important to remember we're talking about people, and this is personal to me, and I know it'll be personal to many people watching this programme. My great-grandparents lived in Latvia. They're Jewish, and we fled because of pogroms. We ended up in Ukraine. We fled again, more pogroms. Then in Nazi-occupied Poland, then fled again. And this is what people have done throughout history. They have fled because they've moved because of war or persecution, or they've moved because of people they love or that they want to travel.
And do you think there should be any limits on those numbers? Judging from your manifesto, you don't.
Well, I think we need to be really clear about the numbers. This year, 800,000 people have arrived in this country. 400,000 of them have come to study. 300,000 of them have come to work and are a net contribution to our tax system.
Yes, but that's answering a different question.
Well,
the question I'm asking you, Zack, is do you believe, because judging from what the Greens say, though quite often you shy away from it for saying it in public, but what is written down is that you believe in a world without borders, therefore anyone who wants to come should be able to come. Is that correct?
So what's important to know is that when we talk about those numbers, we're talking about a policy for a sustainable society.
Okay, you haven't actually answered that.
I'm answering you right now. This is about what it looks like in the future. Yes, in an ideal world, that is the policy I would want. I recognise, though, we are not in an ideal world. We're in a world where the world is in turmoil. We know that we have huge issues in our country. But the issues with the National Health Service, the issues with the lack of council homes, the issues with the society feeling broken are not the issues of migrants or someone who is clinging to a small boat. They are the issues of 14 years of Conservative austerity, continued by a Labour government who say this is an island of strangers, but actually, you're a government of cowards because you won't tell people the truth about migration. And the truth about migration, it is a positive thing for this country. We need migration. We need fair and managed migration, and that's what will change this conversation.
Woman there.
Hello there. I'd just like to ask, it's mainly men coming over. What happens to their families? What's leaving the families behind? Don't you think that's strange that it's mainly men? Can you tell me how many children and women have been over?
Well, actually, we have some men in the audience who came over on small boats and are former asylum seekers. So since you mentioned that, let's hear from one of them. So, Ashraf, where are you sitting? Ashraf, there you are. Can you just... So you came over from Afghanistan on a small boat in the last 4 or 5 years, I think.
Yes, I come from Afghanistan.
So was the UK where you wanted to claim asylum? And did you try and claim asylum in other countries on the way?
I applied for asylum. I was a refugee and I passed many interviews in different countries.
So tell us which country did you try to claim asylum in?
My first interview was in Turkey, and the second one in Macedonia, in Serbia, in Romania, Austria, and recently in Germany, but the end in here.
So you applied for asylum in all those countries, and they all turned you down?
These countries just reject me, and they didn't accept me.
So what do you say to the woman here who says, why is it the men that are coming, and what about their families? Why did you come on your own, and what about the fact that so many men are coming?
Everybody knows my country is not safe for us. We have a war, about 15 years we are living in the war. Because of that, we come here, and I just want to leave, and because of that I come here.
So Zia, when you hear a story like that, for example, do you think that someone like Ashraf, despite the fact he's fleeing a war, and there are many wars around the country, in fact, can't take everybody, they shouldn't be able to come?
Yeah, well, I don't know enough about that particular individual story, so
no,
I'll
sure,
comment more broadly.
But in terms of the principle
I think in terms of broad strokes, let me be clear. If you're entering a war zone, it's generally men first. If you're fleeing a war zone, it's generally women and children first. And the vast majority of the people coming to this country via the English Channel illegally are men. That is a statistical fact. And when people talk about language, I don't know what language people are objecting to. I'm dealing with statistics, I'm dealing with data, and I think that's a sensible way to formulate policy. And I think we should use language clearly. I think we should use language accurately
but just
and
to be
fearlessly.
specific, Zia, because the reform policy is to deport all illegal immigrants in the UK within 5 years. So that would be, I mean, these are real people. That would be someone like you. And that's what you're saying, right? Okay.
If you are in this country illegally, let me be crystal clear. If Nigel Farage is our next Prime Minister, and that's obviously what we're working to deliver, if you're in this country illegally, you will be deported back to the country from which you came. Over 170,000 people have arrived in this country illegally since 2018. Most of that work was done by the Tories, sadly, and that is more people than arrived on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. I have used the word invasion before, and people might object to that term, but the dictionary definition of an invasion is an unwanted incursion into a space of land. And I don't know what to describe it. 170,000 people arriving. By the way, what are the countries from which they are coming? They're coming from Syria, they're coming from Afghanistan, they're coming from Iraq, they are coming from Iran, not countries that have a track record of having Britain's interests at heart. The British state exists to serve the British people. I need to hear from the rest of the panel. Hang on. Daisy.
So let's be really clear. A reform government wouldn't just be throwing out people who have arrived here through irregular routes. They want to rip up indefinite leave to remain. People who have come to this country, who have earned their right to be here, who are granted leave to stay in this country, they want to throw out all of those people, ripping apart families, bringing chaos into our economy and our sector, and doing something which I believe fundamentally is really un-British. Now, on the question about men coming here, I mean, this is just a straightforward fact. The reason why men often arrive in the UK on their own is because the journey is just too dangerous for women and children. When women and children go on that journey, when they're leaving a place of war and persecution, they can be subject to rape, kidnap, trafficking and slavery. And therefore, often men come in advance in order the family can follow them. And that's documented by migration groups. But if I could just finish and come to the question that Paul asked right at the very beginning. I think, Paul, your question tapped into this enormous frustration that British people have on this issue. They've heard slogans. There's been caps, migration caps that have never been met. There are so many broken promises. And I think the British people, the silent majority of British people are crying out for politicians to come up with practical solutions.
Well, let's talk about some of your solutions, Daisy. So one of yours is to set up these big Nightingale centres to clear the backlog and double the number of caseworkers from 2,000 to 4,000 in 6 months. How are you going to do that in 6 months?
But there are lots of caseworkers.
Is that remotely realistic?
I think it is. There are lots of caseworkers at the Home Office, and many of them have left because of the work pressure.
So you're going to find another 2,000 in 6 months?
I think there are many people who have left that service who you could bring back to help run this. But look, realistically, what we have to do, rather than just moving people around from hotels to, army centres or wherever it might be, we have got to drive down the backlog. And the way to do that is to rapidly expand the number of caseworkers who can process these applications quickly. So if we recruit these extra caseworkers, get the backlog down, we should then be in a position to stop using hotels in a matter of months. But at the same time, we need safe and legal routes for those who genuinely are fleeing war and persecution, so they can come here in a managed and compassionate way.
All wars? All wars? I mean, there are wars going on. I mean, we could list them. Yemen, Myanmar, Ethiopia, Sudan. I mean, I could go on. You want safe and legal routes for all those areas?
Let's be clear, the vast majority
that's
of
what I'm
people,
asking.
the vast majority of people leaving those wars go to all sorts of different countries. We don't accept anywhere near as many as a number of other countries.
No, I appreciate that. Usually they go to the country nearest them. But are you saying that we should accept people from all conflict
I think we need to have international agreements so that every single country is pulling their weight on this issue, and that's something that is missing at the moment. But the one last thing I also wanted to say was about the right to work. At the moment, because we have people here and it's taking so long to process their claim, they are falling into the clutches of the very criminal gangs that are exploiting this problem. To get them out of the clutches of the criminal gangs, let's give them the right to work if their claim isn't processed within 3 months. They can then earn their way and we can take money out of the hands of the criminals.
All right, Kieran, you're sitting here very patient. I'm going to come to you. So a little bit more from our audience. Yes, the man there, you've got a scarf around your neck, I think. I can't quite see. Yes.
With the OECD recently releasing a report that says that the government's stringent immigration policies are likely to act as a brake on growth, have the government just scored a spectacular own goal?
All right. Well, listen, we'll come to that. Let me hear another point here. Yes, man here at the front in the green top.
So obviously don't take as many asylum seekers as many other countries. Countries like Turkey take in so many more than us. Why do we keep on complaining that this is such a big issue when we take in just a small percentage of these people?
Kieran?
Can I just pick up on the original question from Paul? Because you mentioned one of the slogans that my party had, and we've been in power for 14 years, and we absolutely have got to take a share of the blame for people's cynicism about politicians' rhetoric on this issue. I absolutely accept that. Absolutely, I think, as Zia has quite effectively laid out, Labour are not delivering on this issue, and things have got a lot worse. But I just have, Mike, just, you know, let people speak. So I can criticise Labour. Actually, I think you probably don't want to hear that much from a Conservative politician. I know when I say that to people, they say, well, you're in charge and, you know, you didn't fix it. So what I'm really focused on is what is our genuine, concrete plan that I think does represent an overhaul in how we deal with these issues. For example, taking us out of the European Court of Human Rights, I think it's absolutely fundamental to allow us to take back control of our borders. No. Too many things that we would like to do, we won't be able to do. For example, if we wanted to send someone back to a country who shouldn't have come here and they don't want to leave, they can say that because the healthcare in the country that we're sending them to isn't good enough, we can't do that. That was clearly never. It's not nonsense. It's absolutely true. Article 3 claims that originally were intended to prevent people from suffering from torture and inhumane treatment are now used to say that if you send me to a country where I can't access the healthcare that I need, that counts as inhumane treatment. That's one example.
In 45 years, the ECHR has only
if I can just finish, Daisy, and then the second
point
point is that actually I think because there is such a level of cynicism about governments around this issue, our policy is to say that MPs directly should be voting on what that cap on migration looks like, so that you're directly in control. In terms of some of the other ideas that the panel have talked about, Fiona, I think you picked up the key point. If you have safe and legal routes, so if anyone that wants to come to this country can come to this country, around the world there are about 100 million people living in displacement, internally or externally. There are 8 million people that want refugee status.
We haven't got 8 million people coming to the UK.
It's the wrong thing to do to pick. It's the wrong thing to do to pick someone who's got absolutely potentially a valid claim and say that we shouldn't bring in controls because there are some people with legitimate claims. We cannot possibly take all the legitimate claims.
All right, well, listen, let's hear...
So you have to then have control and choose who it is that you want to come over to the country. And they never have answers on that problem, never.
No one is.
Let's hear... So the man in the white shirt, now I know you came over on a small boat. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
What's your response to what you're hearing? Because obviously everyone is talking about people like you.
Well, let me say something first. I just want to clear that leaving the convention doesn't just affect the migrants. It would give ordinary people one less court to protect their rights, even for weekend checks and the government power risk on peace settlement in Northern Ireland and damage our security cooperation.
Let me ask you about your situation. I mean, since we were talking about immigration in this programme today, we thought, and we will be talking about people like you, we would see if there were, 2 or 3, 4 people who wanted to come along who are in that situation, and I know you are. So you, because I talked to you beforehand, you came from Iran. I just wonder what you think of this idea, because one thing that the government is talking about is if, and a number of parties are, if the countries are safe, they become safe once you have left them, in your case, Iran.
Okay.
Would you be then happy to go back?
Well, there's 2 points which we need to take care about them. First of all, okay, physically, if Iran is safe, the regime change, there is a regime change in Iran, okay, that's safe for people like me to go back to Iran. But the second thing, which we need to take care about it, is, for example, for me, I have a 4-month-old daughter, so she born here, and she's growing up here. She will growing up here, learning English, learning how to read and write English, and she won't know how to read and write Farsi or even speak Farsi.
So you wouldn't want to go back with your family?
Yeah, even after, let's say, after 5 years, a government which a government from Mr. Zia reform, which came originally from a migrant family, came tell me to go back to your country. What will happen to my daughter? Do you think this is...
I'll happily answer that question. My parents came here legally. They did not come here illegally. And look, there's a clear dividing line in British politics. If you're watching this at home and you want to vote for a party that will prioritise the interests of foreign nationals who came here illegally, or do you want to vote for a party that's going to prioritise British citizens who work hard, set their alarm clocks in the evening before going to bed, and toil to pay tax money?
That is not the dividing line. That is not the dividing line in British politics right now.
Do you know how much money the British taxpayer had to pay?
There are other choices available.
Do you know how much money the British taxpayers had to pay for universal credit payments alone for foreign nationals last year? That was £10 billion.
Do you know how much an asylum seeker gets a week?
Hang on, if you're talking about no one can hear.
£49 a week. £49 a week. This is what this man wants to take off you.
British taxpayers will be spending half the forecast defence budget on universal credit alone for foreign nationals. There's nothing about that that's remotely acceptable, and I'm sorry, we will stick up for British citizens who paid their taxes.
In 2017, there was not a single asylum seeker who arrived on a boat. Durham University did the research. 2017, not a single person.
How many have arrived since then?
Today we have 46,000 a year. And do you know why? It was because of the botched Brexit deal pushed through by Boris Johnson, championed by Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage should be here tonight apologising to the British people.
That is utter nonsense. That is utter nonsense. If it's because of Brexit, why are people arriving in boats in Spain and Italy? When we were in the EU agreement, we took more people. The returns agreement that Daisy just mentioned, we took more people than we sent back. So the idea that it's to do with the returns agreement, it's complete nonsense. Technically, less people. We took more people than we sent back.
Is why they're here. Woman there in the colourful top. Yes, with the glasses.
In practice, how hard would it actually be to set up a system where we had something like a consulate abroad where people could then do their applications, be safe, in a safe country, have their application dealt with, use the money that they're currently giving to criminal, vile people smugglers, use that money to buy a very cheap ferry ticket when they're allowed to come across, come here, use that money to set themselves up in a new life and start earning money, paying taxes, contributing to this country. Really?
Yes. No, further forward. With the glasses. Woman with the glasses. Yes.
If the role was reversed and we were in one of the horrific circumstances, do you think these countries let us in? I do. I think that...
You think they would let us in?
Yeah, I think that we've got to show a bit of compassion.
A bit of compassion, humanity.
They're in horrible circumstances.
Let's take another question on this subject. It was from Jeff. Jeff Taylor, where are you? You had a question that's relevant to this.
Does the panel believe housing illegal immigrants in HMO housing, etc., is both conducive to maintaining local house prices and is safe for those in those communities?
Right, so this is another issue that comes up often when we talk about immigration, is where, irrespective of how many people are here, where should they go?
Yes, it's a good question and it's important. We've had hotel use shoot through the roof. 400 hotels were opened when we came into government. So we are working full pelt to move people out of hotels into larger military sites. And we've said that we will close every single hotel by the end of this parliamentary term, if not quicker. It's costing the taxpayer far too much money, and it's also causing local and community resentment. And it's that sort of resentment that Reform, for example, thrive off. So we will take that away.
So if you're closing the hotels, where are they going?
Into larger military sites, which I've already said, and make it a fairer system. It's fair because it's less attractive than hotels, which ensures that we don't have that asylum shopping across Europe where we're seen as a soft touch, but it's also, fair for those people because they have somewhere to stay and it doesn't impact communities like hotels are.
Well, you say that. I mean, Crowborough is in your patch, and that's a military site which has been closed, and there have been big protests.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first thing to say, Mike, is there are more people in hotels now than before you took office. So just remember that.
Hotel use is half to
in Crowborough, just over the border in the constituency of my colleague Nusgani, and they are fighting tooth and nail to make sure that 600, this is a small little conurbation in the middle of nowhere, rural area, and they want to put 600 asylum seekers, young men, in that village. Completely inappropriate place to put them.
So where should these people go?
The cadets that use that place are going to be displaced. The local community are losing a local amenity as a result. And what's also really shocking is that Zack comes on and talks the talk on these issues as the Green Party leader. The local council leader in Wealdon, where this is taking place, is the deputy Green Party leader. And after saying and fighting and kicking back and saying that actually we should be a safe haven for migrants, etc., has been pushed by the local community into saying that they're going to resist this now because it isn't appropriate and isn't the sort of place you can send people. And the reason we have to have somewhere else we can send people to, a safe third country, so we just don't have to do this stuff anymore. That if you come here illegally, we will send you to a safe third country or back to the country where you came from if that's appropriate. That will take time, there will be a backlog of people to send, but if you do that, it just makes it clear if you come, that's the end of it. And to the lady's point about why can't they just apply in another country, and I do understand why people legitimately ask that question. It comes back to this issue that surely we'll have to have some kind of control over it. We'd have to, otherwise anybody could go there and apply. So then there will be people that sit outside of that control. Do you think they're just going to accept, well, we tried the safe legal route in wherever it might be, so we're not going to try? No, they'll just be straight on the small boats and we'll be back to square one. You have to have somewhere to send people, and you have to say, if you cross it in a boat, you don't get to stay. End of story.
So Zack, what about this idea that, you know, it's welcome all comers, but when it actually comes to it in a local constituency, not so much?
So my deputy leader's been completely consistent with what I've been saying and the Green Party's been saying.
How is that consistent?
Hotels and army barracks are not an acceptable place to store asylum seekers like there's some sort of Amazon returns.
But we have
That's
a housing
totally
shortage,
dehumanising.
so where
exactly.
would you put them?
So we have 1 million...
They give away social housing.
Let's hear this man shouting.
Hang
on. Yes, what are you saying?
Mr. Polanski, why is it not acceptable?
Yeah.
We put our army and our servicemen in there. Why can't they be in there?
Because it's a difference between someone living there for days or months or years. Now, we have 1 million empty homes.
I'm a military veteran.
Mike, let me finish rather than you chipping in. We have 1 million empty homes in this country.
If it's good enough,
we have 1 million households on the waiting list. We need to build council housing. We shouldn't have a race to the bottom on migration. We should have a race to the top on public services. And when you get very wealthy parties who are looking to defend their mates, multimillionaires and billionaires, in fact, Reform took a donation today for £9 million from a crypto bro. We are being distracted by talking about immigration. So when Rachel was being very clear, she was saying migrants and refugees are welcome here. But let's not store them in army barracks. Let's make sure we have appropriate accommodation where people can be working, paying into the tax system, and we can be proud of a country that is humane and compassionate rather than running to be toxic and divisive.
And where are you going to create all these houses from, and over what period of time?
Well, we live in one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world, so we do have to protect nature, but there is also plenty of brownfield sites. Now, you'll sometimes get politicians saying this country is full, but actually only 5% of it is built on. We need to build these houses anyway, so let's stop pitting communities that were born here against people who are fleeing war and persecution, or even migrant workers, and let's actually say, when we build these houses for local communities rather than property developers who can land bank and sit on assets, but actually build homes that people can live in. This is how we integrate communities. This is how we change the conversation. Let's change the conversation on migration, and let's start right now.
Yeah, I think a couple of the things have been answered already. I think the principal problem is the delay in processing applications. There's also other points I agree. I think there should be looked at the possibilities of people being able to work and contribute to the economy, not just take. I'm fortunate that I live fairly local, and I've actually seen these boats come ashore in front of me. Not the ones you see on TV where they're picked up by other boats and so forth and it's paraded on TV. Real people. And there's women and children on those boats as well. I've seen them come ashore in front of me. They don't run off to try and hide somewhere. They sit there patiently and wait until the authorities come along, and then they take them away, because they're hoping, fingers tightly crossed, that they're going to subsequently get a chance to stay in this country. I think it's very sad the way that we have very little care for other people. We're all humans at the end of the day, and I find it very sad that we have little compassion.
we act as the problem only ever starts when they arrive. But if we look at the statistics from last year, more than 70 migrants, men, women, young children, even babies, died. They drowned, they were crushed to death. Do we stop caring? Is this compassion fatigue, or do we just ignore?
Are you talking from personal experience? I'm just wondering.
I do have some experience in this element, yes. I volunteer with the Coast Guard.
Okay.
We don't get heavily involved in that area, but it's something I'm passionate about. People are dying out there, and we just seem to not talk about it anymore. Is that okay?
Mike, you want to
well, thank you for your service with the Coast Guard. It's a vital service, and this is where compassion is important. That's why we're, once we've had to maintain this order and control, opening safe and legal routes.
Mike, you posted out deport. How is
that was paedophiles and rapists. If you're not against that, then you're a very strange man.
You seem to be conflating all of these
very
things.
Very strange man
Let him answer.
acting if you don't want to deport paedophiles and rapists. So it is really important that we have that compassion to bring people over here who are genuine asylum seekers, who are fleeing violence and war. But it's also really important that we're not a soft touch and that we're not seen by many as that. And we do see asylum shopping. And that's why we've reduced their settlement rights to 2.5 years. Before, they were getting almost automatic settlement after 5 years.
So what would you say? What would you say to someone like
also to their hotel and accommodation costs? These things are really important.
What would you say to someone like our former asylum seeker over there? You could say he was asylum shopping. You went through I don't know how many countries. I've forgotten how many you listed now in terms of trying to get asylum, and you've now got refugee status. Are you saying someone like that shouldn't do it?
Ashraf, sir, I've served in Afghanistan. I understand what you were fleeing, and this is why it's important to have safe and legal routes so that people don't need to come across in boats like that. It's not acceptable.
Yeah, but you're not saying that's true for all comers, because there are all sorts of countries where there are conflict, and you do not want to welcome them all.
And this is the difference between the Labour Party and others like the Greens who talk about open borders. We have to do our bit. We have to be fair.
But also, you don't want to accept people from all conflicts. You've got to be honest about that.
What we can't do is have completely open borders. Look, 1 in 30 of all people in this country arrived between 2020 and 2024. That's a really shocking statistic. Our services are suffering because of that. So it's really important, firstly, to invest in public services, but also bring order and control to the system, make it less attractive to come here, make it easier to remove and deport people, but also be compassionate and help people that need it.
But Mike says he wants to deport the sex offenders, and absolutely I agree with him. But one of the reasons we can't always deport them is because of the ECHR and the obstructions it puts in place. There are people who...
The European Convention on Human Rights.
They use claims to the right to family life to stop us from deporting them.
4 cases
and you have to also remember that Labour MPs, including Keir Starmer, wrote letters when we were in office to the Home Office campaigning to stop us deporting foreign national offenders. You know, so that you just can't trust them on this issue.
Right. I know we could do this section of the programme for the entire hour, but we chose a number of questions based on what most of you wanted to talk about. And it wasn't just illegal immigration, though that was a huge part of it, which is why I've spent so much of the programme on it. You also wanted to talk about legal migration. So Jenny, Regan, off you go. Where are you?
So I'd just first of all say that I don't differentiate between legal and illegal.
Okay.
So what does this obsession with cutting migration actually mean in practice? Someone mentioned this earlier. Poorer services, longer waiting lists and fewer staff. And why are politicians calling that a success?
OK, Zia, you seem the obvious person to give.
Sorry, can I just clarify? What are you talking about in terms of... So cutting migration would lengthen waiting list? Is that what your point is?
We had reports last week with the budget that the fact that we've cut net migration by a number of things is actually there was a warning from the OEBR around the cost to, in terms of the cost to our services.
OK, well, look, my parents came to this country in the early 1980s. Between them, we've given half a century of service to the NHS, so I know the invaluable contribution that migrants can make to the NHS. But this notion that this country must have untrammelled insane amounts of immigration, legal and illegal, for our NHS to thrive is a nonsense. You could restaff every doctor and nurse in the NHS with 6 months of legal migration alone just from last year. It is a nonsense. Since 2015, the population of this country has grown by 10%. And in that time, the amount of money that this country spends on the NHS, adjusted for inflation, has doubled. It has doubled to cope with a 10% increase in the size of the population. Why? Because the Tories shipped in 12 million people, despite claiming they were going to cut immigration, left the country with fewer hospital beds. We've had millions of foreign nationals register with GPs. So when you are struggling to get a GP appointment, why are there 19,000 British people had to wait more than 3 days in accident and emergency last year alone? Why? Because we have had a population explosion. And the last point I'll make on this, there are so many British doctors right now, doctors and nurses, struggling to get jobs. The Union for the Doctors is on its knees pleading with the government to create more training places for homemade doctors because the system has been overwhelmed again by foreign nationals. So I'm sorry, the premise of your question is a lie that has been peddled time and time again to gaslight the British people.
Daisy.
So net migration came down last year by 69%. Part of that was because of British people leaving Britain. And I don't think that is a cause for celebration.
But British people have always left Britain for one reason or another.
That's stayed flat. But it has gone up a little bit. There had been a huge increase in the number of people coming to this country under Boris Johnson, now known the Boris wave. And in large part, it was because people were coming here to work in our NHS and in our care sector. Now, I want to thank those people, and I want to welcome them because they have looked after my loved ones. I'm sure they've looked after your loved ones too.
What percentage of them came to work in the NHS, Daisy? Genuine question. What percentage? If you're going to make that point, you start with that.
Many of them, the numbers are out there.
No, come on.
Huge
What
numbers of people worked in the NHS and are in our care sector.
I'll tell you,
and we should welcome those people. But the answer longer term to tackling that issue is to make sure we are investing in skills. And what we don't ever talk about properly in this country is how we should invest in skills here in the UK and balance that with migration at the same time. I think the silent majority of people in this country recognise that if we had a proper skills strategy, an independent skills agency that worked hand in glove with migration, we get the best of both worlds. You get the people that you need to top up where we don't have people with those skills.
Can I just say less than 3% of those people came to work in the NHS?
At the same time.
Let's hear from that silent majority. I don't know. Don't be silent, because we want to hear from you. Yes, the woman in the sort of purpley top with the glasses.
OK, so my question is about the small boats. Why is it that we feel it's our responsibility to bring them back here and sort them out in here? Why is France not helping?
Why is France not helping? Okay.
Why is it they're not being taken back? Do you know what I mean? We are a country now that is just full of hate for everybody.
All right. I'm going to talk about legal migration, if you give me, just because otherwise we're going to, keep going back to the same thing. But I hear what you say. Man in front in the blue sweater.
Mike, you said that the waiting list and the services are due to migration. That is a fallacy. Mr. Yusuf, you talked that there are enough people in the United Kingdom to not need foreign doctors. I joined the NHS as a student in 1974. We've been totally reliant on doctors from Asia initially, and the care sector is totally dependent on care workers from abroad, despite 9 million people not being in work. One reason why people wait for GPs is certainly because the population has gone up, but equally because there's funding for general practice compared to funding for hospital sectors has gone down. So you're conflating lots of different things to state your argument. But my question to you is, you have said, I believe, that migrant workers will lose their indefinite right to live here.
Indefinite leave to remain.
So sorry, I got the wording wrong. So if you've worked as a care worker in a nursing home for 40 years, you're already, since last year, not allowed to bring your children over. So when you get to 65, you're going to be sent back to where you came from. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, it's not at all. And if you had paid attention to what we were announcing, you would not have that view. My mother is a care home worker. My mother is a care home worker.
Typically rude.
My mother is a care home worker.
Be polite to people at the same time. They're not decent.
Has worked in care homes for years. We have announced that we would have an acute skills shortage visa specifically for sectors like the care home sector. But here's what has not happened. Here's what has not happened. And again, I know the care home sector well because my mother has worked in it for years, and I know how hard those people work. What happened under the Boris Johnson era is millions of people came to this country. The vast majority came not to work. They came here on non-work visas. Over 80% came on visas other than work visas. We are saying for every single work visa issued for an acute skilled shortage visa, like the care home sector, an equivalent place must be created to train up homegrown talent to do those jobs. And that is something that has not happened for decades.
So what I love about my constituency is even people that disagree with me are very polite, and I think that should be afforded by you too, Zia. Be polite to these lovely people. So, on health and social care.
Well, it's not just health and social care. I mean, I think Jenny's question is wider, but what you're basically saying is cutting migration is being seen by politicians as a success. Why is it being seen like that? That's your point, isn't it? Because it might affect growth, it might affect public services.
These are absolutely valid concerns, but what we saw...
So what's your answer to her?
I'm going to give the answer, Fiona. What we saw under the last government was unfortunately opening the doors. You know, with 1 million people coming in just 1 year, there was 40,000 spaces to fill in health and social care. 612,000 people came in to fill them. That's unsustainable, and it's undercutting British workers with low-skilled workers. And when I've been out on these raids and visits to car washes, for example, these are people who've come over on these visas and their sponsorships don't exist, so they've been sucked into the black market. That's not fair on them. It's not fair on British workers who are being undercut. So what we're doing is extending settlement from 5 to 10 years. That means that those people will not have access to our health, to our benefits and to our housing, because we are running out of that. It's important that we have control and order over the system, and the right people come to the country who are contributing. And just one more thing on the NHS and doctors. There will be a route for people who are contributing and integrating that's less than 5 years.
Kieran?
I think we have to stop thinking about migration as just one thing, either or good or bad. It's a mixture, actually. Some migrants come here and make a fantastic economic and social contribution, but some don't. Actually, if you look at some of the wages, actually, even after being for quite a while, there are many migrants who don't actually make a net contribution. And again, what I want to really focus on is making it clear to the public that as the Conservatives, we have a clear plan for how we tackle these issues. So we intend to make changes to how you decide whether someone is a net contributor, so looking at their whole household, because actually, it might be true that a healthcare worker comes over and makes a contribution on their own, but actually if they bring lots of dependents, some of them may be elderly, some are at school, they're not making a net contribution. We are saying that they shouldn't ever have made a claim on benefits, again, because if you're coming to make a contribution, you shouldn't be claiming benefits. And again, I go back to that point.
So can I just ask you that in specifically? So say someone comes over here and they work for, I don't know, and they get settled status, they work for 10 years. They get made redundant and they end up taking
this is
benefits.
before they get that. So this is about whether you can apply to indefinite leave to remain. You shouldn't be drawing down on the state if you want to then stay here.
Even if it's just for a very brief period?
No, you shouldn't be doing that. If you're coming here to make a contribution, that's the whole point. We've let you in because we think you're going to make a contribution, then you should be making a contribution, not if you're drawing down on the state, and that's what I think the British public want. And as always, I think if the British public knew that was happening, if we could be confident that when people do come here, they do make a contribution, they're not in social housing, which is in short supply, they're not claiming benefits, I think we're then much more likely to be more relaxed about people that are going to come in. So that's what we would like to do.
The man there in the blue shirt and the black jacket. Yeah.
Thank you. I think most of the politicians, they mistakenly using word of immigration. If people choose to go to somewhere else to work, it was one of the prime minister of this country who told people, if you cannot get a job down here, get on your bike, go somewhere else, find it. People from here, they send their children to Canada. They send people to Australia to find a job. So if people wanted to go to find a job, how are you going to stop professionals to not stay in this country, go to another country?
When people go to those other...
You didn't look after them. That's why they're going to another country to work. Therefore, you have a short of people to work in those sectors. And then people come to here kindly to do those jobs, now be called the immigrant coming here to take our job.
Yeah, it's a very important point. First thing I would say is when people go to other countries, they also have to meet very kind of tough tests. But
I think what he's saying is you want some governments have given visas and have wanted people to come, and now the mood has changed, and actually now you want them to leave.
I think the point you're making, which is a really important one, is we do actually have to have job vacancies filled. But there are 5 million people in this country who are economically inactive, who don't have any requirement to find work on benefits. 5 million people. About 1 in 5 people who are working age or economically inactive. The jobs that we currently have on our occupations where we need people are things like plumbers, electricians, bricklayers. Surely what we need to get better at is making sure that British people who are living here fill those jobs, and that's what I think would benefit everybody.
I will in a minute, hang on a second.
You're burning the people out. They cannot work 12 hours every single day. That's why they come from somewhere else.
We hear what you're saying. Zach, do you want to answer this?
Yes, it's been said a few times tonight about open borders, despite the fact that I've contradicted that and said that I want to talk about fair and managed migration. And the reason why I want to do that...
It's because open borders is part of your policy.
It's in your manifesto. Hold on, it's not in
Have you read it?
Zach, it is as we speak.
Have you read your manifesto?
Have you noticed how rattled they all are by the Green Party? Because actually what I'm talking about is something very pragmatic.
I don't think so.
We have an
Have you read
ageing...
your manifesto?
Am I going to be allowed to talk?
Just ask them the question.
We have an ageing population.
Well, he hasn't.
We've had a declining birth rate, the lowest birth rate for the last 3 years. And ultimately, we have pensions to pay. So we've got people coming over here who, on average, as a migrant worker, are contributing £78,000 over the time, then going back to their home country and not taking out of our system. So they are a net benefit. Most people in this audience and watching this at home will have had an experience of a care worker. 1 in 5 care workers are foreign nationals. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't particularly want to wipe someone's bum. And I'm very grateful for the people who do this work, this really important work, whether it's in the care sector, whether it's in the NHS. Now, I met with the leadership of the BMA recently, the British Medical Association. It's not true that 50% of doctors can't get jobs. That's after 1 month. Now, that's okay, not okay. We need to work on it. But it's not the problem of migrants. We need to listen to people. And next week, I'm going to be going to Calais because I actually want to listen to the people who are having these experiences, both in terms of the boats that we're talking about, and not to go back to it too much. But the reason why people don't stop in France is a safe country, but the UK is also a safe country. And we can't expect every single migrant to stay in France. And largely, they have people from the Congo and from the Ivory Coast because of colonization. And so if people speak English, that's why they want to come to Europe.
But Zach, why should we take anyone that doesn't make a...
Ken, listen, I'm just shutting you down.
Why should we take anybody that is a net drain? You're using average figures. Amongst that, there'll be some people that make a contribution and some people that absolutely do not. If you come here on a low-paid job and bring your grandparents who then use the social care, why should the British public pay for that?
What's fascinating in this debate is we are not talking about the economy and the businesses that are crying out for talent. I know of engineering companies, defence companies, and they are desperate
How many
for talent.
people coming by small boat are working at
I'm not talking about small boats here.
How many people
there
are
are
coming
engineering
by
companies,
don't shout her down, please.
There are defence companies, advanced manufacturing companies that are desperate for talent. There's one in my constituency. They want to fill contracts for the government so we can make our country secure. They cannot find anybody with the engineering requirements that they need in this country. Do you know how much a global visa talent is? It is 20 times more expensive than other competitive countries. We've got British businesses that could contribute to economic growth, and they can't do so.
But not everybody does. Hang on. Everybody contributes to economic growth, I'm afraid.
I want to get to another point that lots of you asked about, and we haven't got very long, so you're going to have to be pretty brief. Let's hear from Alex. Alex Masalovic. Yes, off you go.
So how can communities rebuild a sense of unity and shared identity following the divisions that have arisen in public debates about immigration and flags?
So what's your feeling on this, Alex, since you're asking the question?
From my own personal point of view, I come from an immigrant background. My grandparents came here after the Second World War. And even for myself, I feel that I don't always feel accepted in my community seeing this. How long do I have, even though I serve my community, I'm a teacher, until someone turns around and goes, we don't want you here. Your family didn't do enough. You should be going back to where your family originated from.
And that's how the debate is making you feel, is it?
Yes, and I know that many of my colleagues who have recently migrated from Jamaica to fill a number of teaching slots also feel kind of concerned about the changing in attitudes that are going on.
Okay. Kieran?
I wanted to actually tell you about a lady that I met when I first got started in politics in Birmingham, where I'm from. And actually, I thought long and hard about bringing up this example, but I thought I should. It was important that I articulate what people think. A lady who I met, she stayed on the same street her whole life. She'd grown up on that street. But over the time that she'd lived there, she ended up being living alongside entirely people from the British, Pakistani Muslim community. So she grew up on a street that was very, very different to the street she ended up in. And she talked to me about how very often they would speak in a foreign language, her neighbours, that she didn't understand. A lot of the women would wear veils, and she felt a stranger in her own street. There'd been a huge change in demographics around her. And we can have a lot of sophisticated discussions about how she should be totally okay with that and just get on with it. And underneath, because it's true, we're all the same. And whatever language we speak, whatever veil we might not wear, we're all human, we're all the same, and I understand all that. But as just an everyday person experiencing massive social change around you, it makes people feel uncomfortable. And it was a change that nobody particularly voted for. It was a change that I don't think governments expected. I don't think we've really expected the level of migration that we've had over so many years. And so it's not about whether or not individual migrants are good or decent people. Of course they are. It's about how as a society we change when you get large volumes of migration. And I think we have to be careful and allow people to express that. I'll always remember...
OK, Nick, listen, if you keep going, no one's going to get a word. You've got 4 minutes left.
He called that lady a bigot for saying that, and that was the sort of thing we have to
You've got about 40 seconds each. Forgive me, because this is an important... OK, we'll go on.
Alex, obviously, one of my constituents, and you are valued, teachers are valued, and the fact is, with this argument, to make it less divisive, we have to bring order control. Deporting people who are contributing to war and danger does nothing, and bringing chaos to the system and open border does nothing. Both of those approaches bring division. Our approach doesn't.
Margaret Thatcher said there's no such thing as society, and then the Tories over 14 years shut the community centres down. How do you expect people to integrate if they've got nowhere to gather together, to pray together, to eat together, even to disagree together? English language learning for foreign nationals has been cut by 25% over the last 10 years. The last thing I want to say, as soon as I got off the train today in Dover, a woman recognised me and she said to me, we are not obsessed with immigration in Dover. Actually, the things we care about are our NHS, our libraries and our schools. We've had an
I agree.
This is an immigration special, but when are we going to have a cost of living special, or a climate special, or a tax for rich special?
Well, all I would say is, on question time, I think it's probably true that we talk about cost of living every week. Yeah. So I'm not sure we need a special programme for it, because we do it every week. OK, hang on.
That is reflected on the doors, what Zack said.
What I hear from a lot of people is they are very scared about this rising intolerance. The debate about immigration and asylum is spilling out into a broader thing where people of colour who are born and bred in the UK are being told that they should go home. And I've heard this in my own constituency, and people are very scared. As a British society, we should be proud that we are diverse, we are tolerant. I think we need to be more inclusive. I think we do need to make sure that communities are supported so that integration is got right. But I think the vast majority of people in the country, the silent majority, will embrace our proud tradition of welcoming those who flee war and persecution, but at the same time they are slightly worried about integration and they want support in their communities to be able to do that. So we should be able to do both things, but we have got to make sure that our political debate and our public debate is inclusive and calm and tolerant so that we don't have this rising fear and intolerance.
Zia.
Look, these arguments nationally have already concluded. 70%, according to the latest YouGov poll, say immigration is too high in this country. Immigration is the #1 salience issue by which people vote, and the majority of people in this country support mass deportations, despite this particular audience's views. Those are the facts. The only party that will deliver that, and there will be people watching this programme at home whose blood will be boiling, frankly, by what they've seen.
Hang on, Zia. No, wait 1 minute. There are plenty of people in this audience who have supported your views. Did you not hear them?
Let me finish my point. Well, we got huge rounds of rapturous applause for open borders. We got that multiple times.
How about you stop misrepresenting my position, Zia?
I will say this.
If you're so strong in your position, why do you need to misrepresent?
If you want immigration law in this country to be upheld, if you think Britain should have secure borders, and if you want a sensible immigration policy that allows people who are going to come here and contribute and deport people who are here illegally, then you should vote reform. 1 in 3. The last thing I'll say is this. This week we found out 1 in 3 school pupils in Glasgow.
Not want to solve this.
1 in 3 school pupils in Glasgow.
Let him answer.
1 in 3 school pupils in Glasgow do not speak English as a first language. I empathise with what Kieran just said, that anecdote you just told. Sadly, it was your party that brought about that entire situation. If you want Britain to have secure borders, if you want immigration law to be upheld finally, and British people voted time and time and time and time again through Brexit and 4 consecutive elections for less immigration, and instead we have this panel who will...
Don't trust the angry man who doesn't listen. He doesn't listen at all and is an angry man. He wants this to carry on. He needs this division.
Is that why your party's polling at 14%?
All right. So who was asking about unity amongst politicians? I don't think you've seen that here tonight. We are out of time. I'm going to have to end it there. I had lots with your hands up, so forgive me for not getting to you. That is it for this programme. I just want to tell you that next week we're in Paisley. So talking about Glasgow. So if you want to come and be part of the programme, come and be part of the audience. We would love to see you there. That's Paisley next week. But for now, from Dover, from everyone on the panel, goodbye, and thank you very much to our audience. Thank you for watching.